for coming. We really appreciate everyone's attendance. I want to thank everybody for the attendance last night. We had in the neighborhood 84, 85 people last night, which was very good attendance. So everyone that was there last night, thank you for that. We have a lot of good information for you guys today. I hope that you guys think it's good information. Our finance report, of course, we'll have our auditor will give his report. Jerry will give you guys a report on our water agreement with Glacier. We also will have Jennifer Wade from American Family coming in to talk about the changes in insurance. Just as the mortgage industry had changed somewhat, the insurance industry is changing and it's affecting us. And so she's going to come in and explain some of the changes and some of the things that you as owners need to make sure you have in your policies to help cover some of those changes that we're seeing corporately. And then at some point, I'm going to have Anthony stand up, introduce himself, talk about BHP a little bit. So everybody here will know and see his face. And then we'll have Mark Lisa stand up and talk about the landscaping. So with that, I'll turn it over to John for the proof of notice.
Certainly. Thank you, President Hughes. This meeting was properly noticed in several ways. First of all, by a mailing that went out to all owners in August. Also, the agenda for this meeting was posted in the lobby of the lodge and on the web. So that constitutes a proper notice of the meeting. Regarding a quorum, I would share with you that as of 9:30 this morning, over 200 votes have been cast. To have a proper election and meeting, we have to have at least 133. So we're well over the requirement for a quorum. So that should take care of the notice and the quorum. Shall I go on?
Yes, please.
You should have found on the table outside minutes of last year's meeting. Keep in mind, this is an owner's meeting, not a board meeting. So those minutes pertain to the meeting that occurred about a year ago. So they are, as of today, they are a draft of the minutes. They are not an approved set. So what I hope you've had a chance to read them again to refresh your memory if you were here last year. And I would just say that there's one mistake at the bottom of the first page. Julie Glenn was misspelled. It's not Julie Glenn, it's Julie Glenn. So keeping in mind that that correction to the spelling of her name will be made before these are published as approved. I would like to move that these minutes be approved. Second up. Yes, we do.
So with that, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Good. Thank you.
Okay, before we start the reports, what I would like to do is thank Kathy and Ron McLennan, as they will both be coming off the board this year. Kathy was a valuable resource. We had a lot of, or not a lot, we had some issues, and she was valuable for us to go to consult, and she was a tremendous help. She was originally asked to serve to fill in for someone that had left, and then subsequently ran one more time and was elected. And she has decided that she's trying to start simplifying some things in life, and she's coming off this board and another one. And we just all want to thank her. So thank you, Kathy. Ron McLennan was planning on coming. Tuesday morning, his wife tested positive for COVID. And so they had to cancel their trip. Then I guess the night before last, both her parents were hospitalized with COVID. So he said to tell everybody hi, and he wishes he could be here, but it's just not possible. But Ron was in charge of rules and regulations, and he has asked, and we've agreed, he wants to continue serving in a function with rules and regulations. So we will continue to see Ron around for that. So with that, I will turn it to Joe for the financial report.
Thanks, Rick. Gary, I don't see Todd up there yet. Is he? He's not. Is he logged on?
Todd is not logged on yet.
All right. Following this report, I hope to have Todd Beckstead, our auditor from Grand Junction. He's supposed to come on and give us the audit report. So I need these slides, Gary.
The two that we just got today.
Yes.
Oh, Todd is coming on right now.
Oh, good. All right. So that's the last slide. I need these. It's probably in another file.
This is what Elisa just gave.
Elisa, Gary doesn't have these. At least he doesn't think he does. They're hiding.
Well, I emailed.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah. Okay, hang on 1 second.
Just tell a joke, don't worry.
Yeah, I'm not good at that. I'm not a stand-up comic. I guess I could take this time to do the other report I was going to do.
Yeah,
Right?
might as well.
Okay, so golf tournament tomorrow,
Yeah,
10 o'clock. A lot of you are signed up. As of last night at the owner's reception, recruited a couple more people, and we had a total of 10 teams as of last night. Now we have 9 3/4 teams because I had a cancellation this morning. So anybody here, or if you know anybody who's a closet golfer and wants to get in on this, it's a fun event, it's a scramble, easy. It doesn't matter how good a golfer you are. We've got a lot of bad ones, including me. So if you know of someone, or any of you think you might want to play, get with me right after the meeting, or during the break that we take for the balloting for the board, and I'll be happy to include you. And for those of you that are playing, don't forget the pairings party tonight at 5 over the basement.
And to pay.
And don't forget to pay your fees, and you can do that at the front desk.
We got it.
Got it? All right, here we go. Okay, so yesterday at the board meeting, as usual, we give a pretty detailed financial report of our entire financial statements. I like to call this the 10,000-foot view. So this is just a summary. So this is our balance sheet, summary of the balance sheet, which is a snapshot of what our financial position looks like right at the moment. So those are pretty much all of our bank accounts. If you look at the 3 permanent reserve, I'd like to point this out. We have a total of those 3 accounts. We keep them in separate banks, so we spread the risk, because of the FDIC insurance limits. So we spread this out into different banks. And we have, and there's the account at Bank of San Juan's is a money market account. the two accounts in Bank of Indiana and Stearns Bank are both laddered CDs. So they're CDs whose expiration dates, turnover dates stagger every 6 months. So we have some liquidity, some flexibility with liquidity of those. And then now we'll be getting the benefit of higher rates. Over the last 2 or 3 years, we were not getting the benefit of rates because rates were down. So we had some CDs that were at higher rates and then they renewed at lower rates. That's turned around now, as you know, and interest rates are going up. So we should be seeing a little bit more revenues from those interest gains. The total of those three accounts right now is $783,579. That's how much money we have in our reserves for emergencies or long-term projects, major capital projects. And what this does is helps us not to have to consider special assessments, which we try to avoid like the plague. So our total cash assets at this time is, scroll that up just a little bit, Gary. Up. Yeah. I don't know, is that what, was it down, not up? Yeah. So anyway, total cash assets, just under 1.2 million, and accounts receivable is at 51,000, and that's basically just some straggling accounts with owners that haven't paid their dues yet. All right, so let's go to the next page. This is a look at our cash flow statements, our income statements. Go ahead and scroll that so the more the, yeah, there you go, right there. Okay, so our revenue budget is year to date is 1.369 million, and we're at 1.326 million. We had this discussion at the board meeting yesterday. The main reason for this is a pretty large backlog in billing for maintenance work orders over the last, what, Gary, 3 or 4 months, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and once that catches up, that will even out, and that's being done right now. So we'll get that all taken care of, and we'll be in pretty good shape. Then you have the major categories of our expenses: admin, operations, personnel, and utilities. Some of those are a little bit out of line right now, but they're mostly out of line low, which is good. So it means we're underspending. And it's showing what a net income at this point of $92,000. They call that, the accountants call that net income. I just like to think of that as a current surplus. We'll probably eat into that at some point, and it may come down some. Go ahead, Gary, to the next. Yeah. This account is where we handle the first yellow portion up there was our general operating expenses, things we do on a year-over-year basis. This slide is things we do on a one-time basis, so special projects, things that may not occur year to year. And we budget for this every year. And right now, what happens with these is the maintenance crews get busy in the summer when people are here and they're attending to those kinds of needs. When there's a lot of people on the property, and in the fall, coming into now, September, October, November, this is when we'll catch up on a lot of these capital projects. So it looks like we're underspending by a lot, and we are at this point, but again, that will all catch up, and year end will be pretty much where we need to be. Next one, Gary. This is a snapshot of our permanent reserves, where we get the money from. You can see the income that we had starting last year, the contribution that our budget was planned to make in 2022, and some other inputs. Raise that up again, Larry. And then down. All right, that's down. And then at the bottom, that 275,000, we draw, that's the amount of money we draw from this account to fund the capital projects that were on the previous slide. So then you can see that our net balance at 797,000. Pardon me?
Draw annually?
We draw annually. It's not always the same amount. That's what we drew this year. Yeah.
Pardon me, Joe. Excuse me one second.
Who's that?
This is Chuck Corger online. I wanted to let you know that we are not seeing any of the slides you're talking about online.
No.
And it also appears that no one's monitoring the chat.
I'm not monitoring chat because I want to show the slides.
Yeah. Any idea why that slide isn't being shared on the?
All we are seeing is the budget slide.
Thanks for letting us know that. We're trying to fix it right now.
Thanks much.
Yep. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, sorry you missed all that. Anyway, so yeah. Okay, so next slide, Jerry. Let's finish there. Okay, so this last slide on the income statements is how we fund our front desk, service and security desk. The income mostly comes from revenues from rentals, taking a share of the rental income, and then there's a couple of revenue streams for this right out of the operating budget to fund the front desk. Service and security desk, and it's really down this year. This is the one area of concern we have, and we talked about this at the board meeting yesterday. The income is down largely because we budgeted based on last year's rental revenues, which were quite high, and they just really haven't turned out to be as high this year. So we're going to have to take a strong look at that when we budget for next year. Apparently last year, coming right out of COVID, when people were starting to travel or wanting to get someplace where they could go and have some wide open spaces and not be real close to other people, we really saw a big jump in rental occupancy last year, and it just didn't carry over this year. So while we planned for it, it didn't happen. So that's where that's at. And that's likely to stay like that. And so that'll be a loss. We'll have some gains in our other accounts, so it'll balance out. And net effect won't be. All right. Now the pie chart, Gary, which I think is in another file.
Yeah.
This next slide, we like to put this one up here. We call it, where does my money go? So it's it's just a pie chart, and it's some of the same information that was on the slides I just shared with you. So scroll to the top. Yeah. So this pie chart represents major segments of where we spend the money that we gain in revenues. The largest one, the blue in the upper right there, that's utilities. So the biggest single expense we have is utilities, which includes water and sewer, electricity, the satellite TV, telephone, internet, and refuse collection. And that totals about close to $900,000 a year. Quite a lot of money. The orange at the bottom is our personnel expenses. That's all of our salaries, maintenance, our staff, and the front desk staff. The gray on the left is maintenance. Now that's not labor, at least not our in-house labor. It's parts, supplies, materials, and outside contract labor that we have to hire to do specialty work, like on the sprinkler system, the fire sprinkler systems, and so forth. Any electrical work, we have to hire a licensed contractor. We don't, a licensed electrician, we don't have one on staff. So that's where that is. The yellow in the upper left-hand corner is capital projects. The small blue wedge is administrative expenses, and then the green is insurance. And if you scroll up, Gary, to where the numbers are, and there's the numbers up a little bit more. There you go. And so you can see that totals out to our annual budget, which is this year's $2,733,000. And then there's the numbers that go with the pie charts. And any questions? Got one in the back. Sure. Okay. Speak up, please.
Decline in revenue from rental drops down from last year.
Yes.
How did it compare to pre-COVID?
Last year was a big jump. So I think I don't recall what the year prior was. Yeah. I know 2021 was a big jump over 2020. If I was to guess, I would say this year probably mirrors 2019 somewhat.
It's in that range.
It's in that range.
Yeah.
Okay.
Heather joined Share Vacation Rentals last week. Her marketing. That's from previous. Second question is, earlier this year, we had higher outside contract, basically for all maintenance. Is that arrangement going to continue, or are we?
That's on the agenda. They're going to talk about that. For your information, the personnel segment, the big yellow one at the bottom, without going back up to it, that was what we budgeted last year for salaries. And that included all of our maintenance staff, which we don't have anymore. We do have still have a couple of permanent employees, but the majority of the maintenance is done by BHP. What we did in the budget to make things work out, if you've been in the board meeting, you saw this yesterday, is we put their contract labor into a line. We added a line to the salary section of our budget, and that's right now we're tracking that. So we took away some expenses and then we added some, and so that's tending to track fairly closely at this point. Any other questions on that? Peggy?
Copy on whatever of all the slides you're showing us.
Sure. Do you want to
We used to have
just send an email to Gary and he'll say, yeah.
Put it on the website.
You can put it on the website. All right. No other questions? You said Todd is on, right?
Todd is on.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to introduce Todd Beckstead. He's online with us. Todd's firm is in Grand Junction, Colorado. He's been our independent auditor for many, many years. Does a really good job for us. And so he's going to report on 2021 audit of our financial statements.
Okay, thank you. It's great to be with you. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you great,
Yes.
Todd. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to present the 2021 audit, and again, would like to express my appreciation to the board for the trust placed in me to do the audit. I have enjoyed very much working with Tamaron again this year. Elisa was well prepared for the audit. She has been very responsive in providing information that I've requested. And then as I followed up with additional questions, she has responded very promptly to all of my questions. And I'm grateful for her help in doing the audit. As most of you probably know, the audit or an audit involves selecting a sample of transactions from throughout the year, and then based on testing those transactions by looking at supporting documents, I issue an audit opinion based on that work. And it's my opinion that the financial statements fairly present the results of the operations of Tameron for 2021. My audit resulted in a few adjustments. I've provided those to Elisa, and she's reviewed those and agrees with those. This would be my opportunity to let you know if there were any significant disagreements with management over accounting matters, over accounting policies. I'm pleased to report that there were none. The operations, the internal controls were fairly consistent from one year to the next. Based on the size of operations, I review those controls and then assess risk related to the financial statement audit based on those controls. I don't have any material weaknesses in internal controls to report. Again, the audit went well, and my opinion is that the financial statements fairly present the operations. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Is there anything that I can help you with?
Anybody have any questions for Todd? The audit that he speaks of is now posted on the association website, correct, Gary?
I believe so. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
So it's there if you wish to review it, look at it. We used to have a pile of paper audit copies, but in the interest of saving trees and conservation, we decided to just do that virtually. The website's there and pretty much everybody has access to it. So again, any questions? I don't see any questions, Todd. Thank you very much.
Okay, my pleasure. Again, thank you for the opportunity to serve as your auditor, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Thanks again. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to switch just a little bit. Jennifer Wade is here. She's taken time out of her day to come and visit with us, and we'll let her go ahead and speak with you guys.
Jennifer Wade, American Family Insurance. Can everybody hear me okay? Would you like me to go over recommendations or some of the changes?
And Jennifer,
yeah,
come closer to the microphone.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, a couple of changes and then how they'll benefit.
Okay. So we're here, we take care of the Master Association insurance. And so for the building coverage, that is where we're taking care of that part. So a couple changes that are happening to the policy at this upcoming renewal. And then kind of what those recommendations would be for you to make sure that you are properly covered as owners. And so a couple things going on in the industry in general with larger associations and larger complexes like Tameron. Especially in Colorado, a lot of challenges with hail in certain parts of the area, states, whereas we have wildfire challenges out here. And so there's definitely been a lot of pressure on the industry with larger complexes, and especially when we get into, what Tameron has about 96 million in building coverage. And so a lot of carriers are making some changes to try to adapt, to try to stay in the business. Unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of companies actually get out of those risks and actually, not providing insurance. And so some of the changes that we're seeing in the industry for the ones that are staying, American Family Insurance is staying in the business of taking care of associations, great associations like Tameron. But there are making some changes to try to stay competitive and to be able to continue to offer insurance and not have to pull out of that market. And so a couple things that we're seeing is increased minimum deductibles. So a lot of, of course, 96 million, a lot of carriers are asking for the insured to take on a larger burden for deductibles. They are starting to enforce wind and hail deductibles percentages. And actually in the industry, a lot of companies are going to percentage deductibles versus flat, singular, $1,000, $10,000 deductibles. And so they're going to percentages. You get into buildings, like the Lodge is a pretty large building. It's got a lot of coverage. you get into percentage deductibles, that can be pretty hefty, you know, if those kind of deductibles are applied. And so that's kind of going on in the industry. And so American Family is having to make some changes because we are becoming one of the few that is still in the game of covering associations. And so a couple things that are changing with the upcoming renewal is Tamarron used to have a singular $10,000 deductible. So heaven forbid, total loss, 96 million, association paid 10,000. Unfortunately, that's pretty low. And you know, that's not something that they can continue to do. So they are changing it to it as a per building deductible. And so, and again, hopefully, you know, we're never having to talk about a total scenario. But it will be a 10,000 per building. So if there are a couple buildings involved in an incident and a claim, it'd be 10,000 per building. So that's one of the changes. So of course, that's increasing the burden that, you know, Tamarron would have if there was, heaven forbid, a total loss. The other parts that, and this is really just becoming, yeah, I'd say a lot of insurance carriers are adding the wind hail deductibles, just because the wind hail, usually the biggest issue is roofs, right? It's roofs that are getting destroyed and having to be replaced. And so there is a wind hail deductible that is getting applied. And so it's a 5% wind hail deductible. That might seem a little scary, especially if you just heard me, you know, we're talking about 96 million in coverage. That is per building. So it would be a matter of, you know, what that building limit is. If there's one building that's wind rips off the roof, it's 5% of the limit of that building. That's still a pretty high deductible, kind of even when we get some of the smaller buildings that have, you know, only a few units. So what it's really coming down to is that, you know, most insurance carriers are just not wanting to, basically they can't continue to replace roofs every time there's a major windstorm, and it's becoming more of a maintenance item, and that a lot of carriers are kind of making this change. So a couple things that might seem scary, and I know we had a talk with Rick and Joe and about how I ruined their day, but there's a couple pieces to this that, as far as making sure you guys have proper coverage where everyone will be okay and no one will be impacted negatively by this. And so one of the key things, and I actually have some flyers I'll leave, I think they've got a digital copy they can send out with owners' recommendations. And one of the key recommendations that you really need to make sure in your policy is your loss assessment coverage. And so that loss assessment coverage is absolutely critical, because as long as you have a nice healthy limit, in the event of these claims where we have some higher deductibles, that loss assessment coverage basically will cover any assessments to you that are part of that claim. So a couple scenarios that this would come into play is, so you've got, so first one would be, we just talked about a pretty large wind hail deductible, right? So there's a good chance if it's not a major, you know, event, that the damage to the roof is less than the deductible. But it's still a substantial claim, right? It's still going to be a couple of thousand. I mean, what we were talking about the lodge, I mean, talking a couple $100,000 if that whole roof had to be, you know, replaced or repaired. So, you know, if it's under the deductible, the association would then assess that share of that loss to you as an owner, because obviously they got to take care of the roof. They can't not take care of the roof. They assess that to you. Your owner's policy, that loss assessment coverage, covers it, pays it. And in most cases, I can't speak for, of course, every insurance company, but a lot of policies, there's no deductible to you that applies in most of those cases. So no out of pocket from your side of it. So association takes care of it, assesses you for your share of that loss. And essentially no one's actually coming out of pocket. The reserves are replenished because they're recouping it from that assessment. Your policy kicks in, usually with zero or minimal out of pocket for you. And you know, it's usually if there's a deductible, it's pretty low if there is a deductible factored into that loss assessment coverage. So that's one scenario where that loss assessment coverage is important, because we are seeing those higher deductibles, right? Another one would be just to help replenish reserves. So maybe we do have a singular event, association pays their $10,000, you know, per building, and you just went through the finances. You've got a lot of finances that need to be protected. So they're going to, again, assess you your portion of that $10,000 deductible so they can replenish the reserves and make sure that's available for the next claim. And again, your loss assessment coverage would cover that zero or minimal out of pocket. Last but not least, yeah, go ahead.
When you say per building, my unit is in High Point. I don't have any buildings? 5 buildings? That means that area is 50,000.
If every building was impacted, yes.
Whereas the lodge would have 10,000.
Correct. The last but not least, reason to have a nice healthy loss assessment. Hopefully this is not ever the case, right? We do our best to try to make sure that we are covering Tamarron properly. The coverages are appropriate. There's a couple kind of backups in the policy for extra cushion and extra coverage, but heaven forbid there ever was a claim and the limits were still not enough. Again, Tamarron has to rebuild, right? So they're going to say, okay, we were short 50,000. All right, we need to assess everyone their fair share of that 50,000. And again, your loss assessments coverage would cover that. So I can't speak highly enough that this is such a critical piece of coverage for you. So it's built into pretty much every policy out there. There's going to be some, but if you haven't talked to your agent about that limit, I definitely encourage you to check it because I have seen limits as low as like 1,500, which in some of these cases, 5 buildings, if they have a lot higher, sharing that burden a little heavier, that might not be enough. And so I definitely recommend, probably have it, but check your limits. We recommend at least 50,000 just to give you some extra cushion, a little bit more peace of mind. Most cases, bumping it up to that limit is minimal. You're looking probably a couple dollars difference here. So nothing that should make or break your policy by any means, but give you that extra protection, that extra cushion just for that what if, and then make sure that you're not coming out of pocket because of a claim event that they're assessing you for.
That is referred to as loss assessment coverage?
Yes, absolutely. Anything else you would like to cover?
That was the main thing that I wanted you to cover.
So what is, many of us have American Family as our condo owners policy in addition to having American Family as the HOA's policy. Sorry. Many of us have American Family as our condo owners policy. I know I do. And then we also have American Family, Jennifer was just talking about, as our HOA's policy covering the buildings. So in that case, what's the benefit of that?
So there are some benefits of having your policy with us as well. And so one of the first pieces is if there is a claim that impacts the building and your unit, if you're covered with us as well, your deductible is waived. And so you don't have anything out of pocket, in that event where everybody's impacted. The other really important part is that you have one company handling the claim. And so you have one company that is looking at the CC&Rs because oddly enough, with insurance on associations, you will not see in our policy or even on your own policy where the coverage starts and stops. And that's because the insurance actually has to follow the CC&Rs of each association. It's actually the association that tells us where the association's responsibility starts and stops, and then where the owner's responsibility starts and stops to building coverage. And so with that, it's interpretations. And so you've got, it's Tamarron, I'd say it's one of the more clear ones that I've seen out of associations, but we've even had where there's been differences in interpretations between carriers. And so it's not that, in most cases it ended up getting covered, but there was a little bit more back and forth and basically one company didn't agree with the interpretation and they disputed how the coverage should apply. And so with American Family, if you're with us, the association is with us, there is no dispute. We read it one way and then we start applying the coverage to the appropriate policy. There's no back and forth. We know exactly. And because we have worked so closely, we know very well where those coverage boundaries lie. And, that starts off much smoother than some other cases where one company is interpreting it a different way and they say, well, no, we don't think that's covered. We think, that's the association. It's not the owner's policy. And that can cause just delays and frustration, right, in the claims process. And, ideally, your claims process always goes as smoothly as possible. So that is one other big benefit of being with American Family. So.
Just for your information, everybody in this room should have gotten an email with those recommendations.
We've got a few calls.
Yeah. So and the other important factor that Jennifer doesn't mention is that our our declaration, Article 1010, and that this was in that email, requires that you maintain a condo owner's policy for the contents of your unit, for the inside the drywall. So if anybody doesn't have that, you really should go out and get it.
Okay, this the policy that we individuals have is that's called an HO6 policy.
Condo policy.
And the association policy is at bare walls.
So, but, I mean, and we don't actually like that terminology. It's kind of, we use it loosely, but basically owners need walls in, right? So you guys are responsible for rebuilding the entire interior of your unit. So countertops, paint, flooring, fixtures. The association, easiest way I describe it is association is basically putting back up the building and a bunch of empty shells. And so, and then your unit is what actually, your policy is what makes it actually livable and an actual true, you know, unit.
There's different terms in the industry. There's drywall in, drywall out. There's studs in, studs out. Basically, if you're standing in your unit and you can see it, it's your responsibility. If you can't see it, it's the association's responsibility.
So the sheet rock is the association.
Sheet rock is yours. Drywall in.
The sheet rock is yours. The studs are
the
ours.
associations.
Behind the walls, association.
Anything behind those walls is the association.
Sorry. Yeah, and I apologize if I don't know all of them. I know we are, so we're A rated for AM Best. And so we're definitely a financially secure company, been around. If you haven't heard of us, if you're, you know, we're not in all states, we're actually in 19 states. So you may not have heard of us from California or Texas. Yeah, we're definitely. I'm sorry? That I don't know offhand. I'm sorry. I'd have to look it up.
And you're going to have to repeat questions because the people online can't hear that. They can't hear the audience's questions or comments.
They were asking the AM Best ratings, which are just some of the financial security ratings for insurance companies. And so AM Best, we are A rated. There are some other ratings, but I don't know that number offhand. I apologize.
I just wanted to mention too, if you have your own common policy, you can have a certain policy if you own it and don't rent it. But if you rent it, then it's going to change to a different kind of policy, right? Is that true?
As I was going to say, it's just
Good
one
point.
other recommendation I would say is if you own it, it's a condo policy. If you rent it at all, you need to talk to your agent. Each company handles it differently. Like with us, we have a couple different ways we can handle it. And it really depends on how often it's being rented out. But please, please do not assume it's covered. Especially make sure then if you're doing vacation rental, that is definitely different than a regular rental, right? If you're renting it out long-term, you know, to a tenant that's there for a year, that's a certain type of rental scenario. Vacation rental is a whole different beast. There's some companies that will not cover it. It's not eligible. So make sure, definitely check with them on how you're using it. Make sure they understand exactly what you're doing with it, because it may require, sometimes it's an amendment and just a little additional premium to cover you properly, but sometimes it's a full rewrite to a different, more of, you know, like if it's all pretty much vacation rental, you use it a couple times a year, that's actually more, most companies consider it more of a business, you know, an investment property and more of a business policy to cover you properly. Great point.
Non-paid commercial. I was skeptical myself because the rider was on ours to understand cars. So we get pretty substantial discount for the full coverage. Not the condo, it's a rider for an outstate.
Could someone repeat the question, please?
We're not quite there yet.
We haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay, let me try to speak a little louder. What I experienced this week, I went to my insurance company. current quote. Then I called yours. Based on your recommendation coverage. So I was expecting without any discounts, since it was a policy, considerably higher. Coverage was considerably lower. We had no assessment coverage. Liability was like $300,000. They didn't even write it. So it is worth.
Yeah. Okay. For the people online, what Karen was saying was she shopped her existing policy against the recommendations Jennifer had made to her with American Family, and she could not even get the same coverage as Jennifer recommended with American Family. And the increased coverage that she now will get with American Family is substantially cheaper than her pre-existing coverage with her other company.
And I'll say, we're not always going to be the cheapest. Every scenario is different. But, like I said, we are A-rated. A couple pieces that with the Marshall fires, kind of they had that, freak fire event, not just a regular wildfire, right? That wildfire just came in a hurry. And there's a lot of actually legislation and debates went on with the government and kind of enforcing insurance companies to do things because of the level of devastation. And of course, this happened while construction costs are astronomically high. And so there immediately was massive concerns of a lot of homeowners wondering if they had enough coverage. I mean, kind of immediate panic because of the time that it happened and just pretty much that neighborhood was wiped out, right? And so there is a lot of legislation currently in the works. There's been some kind of mandates imposed to insurance companies just to kind of force certain companies to do certain things that maybe they weren't. And actually American Family, in this case, and I can't say this is always going to be the case, right? This is a unique case. They are going above and beyond the rules of the policy technically. But American Family has actually kind of exceeded some of those expectations with some of the payouts that they're doing and how they're handling it. Usually to get replacement costs on your unit, you have to rebuild your unit, right? You can't just take your money and go have a holiday. It's meant to rebuild and meant to replace. And they actually are allowing people to move to different areas to rebuild. They're allowing people to actually get replacement costs without having it rebuilt yet, which is really, really unique. And like I said, I can't say that this would happen with every claim, right? But kind of to speak to that, of course, I am American Family, so I bleed American Family, but there are reasons that they are a great company, and I do believe in what they do. And so they're doing that. A lot of other times with total losses and personal property. First thing that the insurance company asks for is, okay, give me a list of what you got. And so, to get paid out, you got to list every single thing in your house. You don't have to have it to get the insurance, but when you're ready to make that claim, they're going to come to you, okay, well, tell me everything you got. And you have to list, how many pants you have, how many dishes, what was in your food pantry, how many cans of soup. And that's, of course, a bit daunting and can be a bit overwhelming, especially in the case of a total loss. It's not like it was a theft and we have a few things missing. We got to go through the whole house. And most carriers and in most events, they usually do what the kind of industry standards, they'll pay 30% upfront in the case of a total loss, right? Give you 30% of whatever your limit is so you can go start replacing stuff. But you still got to get that list in to get the rest. And American Family stepped up and they are cutting checks for 75% of what their limits were so people can go start replacing stuff. And so just some pieces, like I said, it is unique. This is not something I can't say that, if it happened here that they do the same, but it is kind of, I think, speaks to the level of our company and their belief in taking care of our customers. And And especially when we have some really, really crazy things happening, kind of going above and beyond what even the legislation is kind of starting to push on some of those, that particular things.
With today's technology, photos, you go through your home as a precaution, put in your safety deposit box or something, photos.
So you still would have to come up with a list, but so kind of the recommendation on this topic is, you know, because that is really daunting to think of listing everything in your house, is go take photos, general photos of your house, because that will help you put the pieces back together, right? So, you know, you go into your living room, take a picture of the living room, and then, you know, you're going to remember the big stuff, right? Like couch and tables, that's easy. And it might seem odd, but what I recommend is going into your kitchens, going into your cabinets, opening up cabinets, opening closets. Might sound crazy, but take a picture of your dishes, take a picture of your pantry, take a picture of your closet, because then at least you can go back, because they will say, okay, so how many pairs of jeans did you have? At least you can have a kind of visually count out. It might even help stir some things, you know, especially I always say your garage and your closets, hide stuff that you don't use every day. And it might be not till next year that you even remember, oh, you know, I've got one item. And it's not that you can't come back and claim that, but of course, you know, it's sometimes it's just, you don't use things every day. And so take pictures, it will help you. Of course, focus on your high ticket items. If you have a lot of a certain thing, if you have any kind of collections, spend a little more time on documenting and you know, photographing that. High ticket items, high value items, of course, spending a little bit more time. And then otherwise some general photos, because that will help you at the end of the day. If it is a scenario where they're okay, give me your list. And at least it can help you put some of those pieces back together and bring down the stress level of just racking your brain and trying to, you know, yourself remember going through your house and trying to think of everything, which is kind of, you know, I think for anybody kind of an impossible and daunting task.
So to kind of summarize the whole situation, you know, as it applies to the association, Joe, Lisa, and I met with Jennifer. She went through the changes. The major change, aside from some increases, is our deductible went from $10,000 to $330,000 out of pocket. So there was a substantial increase there. We went through all that, and at the end, Jennifer apologized for ruining our day. Joe then said, you know, I really don't want to do this, but I may ruin your day. So he told Jennifer, you know, because of these changes, we felt we had a duty to investigate and shop rates. So Jennifer told us the specific things we needed as we contacted people, the specific things we needed to tell them and what to ask them about. Elisa and Paige made calls to several companies. Most of them did not even want to talk to them. They said they will not cover properties like these. The ones they were able to talk to were substantially higher. So, you know, we feel like we've done our due diligence in trying to, you know, get the best that we can for everybody. And at this point, you know, we feel like where we're at is the best thing for everyone involved here at Tamarron. I know originally 7-8 years ago, Jack Flott, which is long before I was on the board, Jack Flott did some investigation, and he switched from the existing company to American Family. And at that point, it saved the association about $75,000 a year. So, you know, this piggybacking on what Karen said, you know, our relationship with American Family is proven to be a good relationship for Tamarron. So does anyone else have any other questions for Jennifer?
I have an easy question for you. Hi, this is Claudia. And I'm guessing you didn't, because this is a big business here at Tamarron, but did you check with USAA about insurance? You know USAA, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't even think USAA would cover.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that.
That was my guess. That was my guess. I just had to ask.
Yeah, because
unless everybody was
the association, yeah, the association is not military affiliated. I personally have USAA, but
me too. They're wonderful. Jennifer, that's correct. USAA wouldn't do a big place like Tamron, right?
I don't think they even do business insurance, as far as I know. They're.
I don't either. I know. Yeah, they're great for renters insurance, but yeah. Thank you. I just was curious.
Well, thank you, Jennifer, and you're welcome to stay if you want, or if you want to go. Either way.
Thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone. Please don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay. Next, I wanted to have Jerry go ahead and give you a overview presentation of the water and sewer agreement that we completed this year.
Morning, everybody. I'm happy to be here. Actually, I'm more than happy. I'm extremely happy. I'm ecstatic to be here this morning to tell you about the culmination of more than 8 years of work to get a new water and sewer agreement in place for us that will be durable and will be good for Taco. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that and about the process and some history. Gary, can you bring up slides? Okay, scroll down to the outline. So what I plan to cover this morning is who members of the Water and Sewer Committee are, some introductory remarks, and then review some history, and then tell you what changed with the new agreement that we have now, and what it means to all of us as Taco owners. Pardon me?
The same speak up in the back.
Speak up?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you can read the outline about what I intend to cover today. So we'll just move on. Gary, can you show the committee members? They include representatives from Taco, including current and former board members. And we also had a lot of help from our outside counsel, our legal counsel, Ken Golden, and also from our water consultant, Steve Harris in Durango. I will say that this committee, over the last 2 or 3 years, probably did at least 50, if not 100 iterations on the provisions of the agreement that we finally signed into place with the new water company that is running under Glacier now. Okay, next slide, Gary. That new agreement that we have went into effect on January 1st of this year. So last year when we met here, we did not have a new water and sewer agreement. The last agreement, in fact, that we had went into effect in 1989. And there was an addendum to that agreement that went into effect in 2004 that dealt specifically with our water rates. I'll talk a little bit about that more later. That rate addendum expired in 2013, and we have gone all that time from 2013 until this year without having any rate agreement in place for us. Joe showed you in the financial report the utilities line item, and it is a huge number. It is a very large number, and the largest portion of the utilities budget is the water and sewer that we pay for. This new agreement that we have is a big deal. I can't understate that at all. It does a lot for us, and it replaces very problematic previous agreement that we had. So let's move on to some history, Gary. In 1989, when that original agreement was signed between Taco and the predecessor of Glacier Club, there were no meters in place to determine how much people were using. So how did they come up with assessing rates for everybody? They counted the number of individual condos at Tamarack, which was 381 at that time. And they counted the total number of houses and other buildings that were being served by the water company. There were 116. So they, in my opinion, somewhat arbitrarily, but because they didn't have any better methodology, said that Taco would be responsible for about 77% of all of the costs to operate the water and sewer company. Okay. And everybody, all of the users, were assessed the same rate per month, regardless of the size of the units. So some of the big houses were paying the same amount on average as every Taco owner. In 2003, after the Carltons bought Glacier Club, there was an addendum that was put on that 1989 agreement that dealt specifically with our water rates. And what went into place for a period of 10 years was a provision that we would pay, Taco would pay a flat bulk rate per year that would cover everything. And that Glacier Club would be responsible for all operations and maintenance and any capital improvements. Okay. That initial rate that we were charged back in 2004 was $295,000 per year. Another very important provision of that rate agreement was that Glacier could raise the amount that we paid, our bulk rate, every year by as much as 3%. And in fact, they raised it by the maximum almost every year since 2004 when it went into effect. Okay, some more history, Gary. It turned out that the amount that Taco was paying every year was basically paying all of Glacier's operations and maintenance expenses to run the water treatment and the wastewater treatment plants and deliver water to us and take away our waste. Every owner, including each individual Taco condo owner and every other owner in Glacier Club, Rockwood, and the other estates surrounding here, paid a flat fee per month. That fee in 2018 was a little over $90, about $92 per unit. Everybody, regardless of size, paid that amount per year. And while that money covered the operations and maintenance costs for Glacier Club, there wasn't anything left over basically to pay for capital improvements. As I said, they raised our rates annually to the maximum by the maximum 3% most years, where in 2018, our water and sewer bill was over $416,000, a big number. We all paid for that. We started doing analyses and put in our own metering to determine how much we were using, how much water we were using, because we had a very strong and well-grounded suspicion that we weren't using anywhere near the original 77% of all the water produced that we were being charged for. And you probably can't read the numbers, but in 2017 at the fall board meeting and at the owners meeting, I presented an analysis of a 12-month period of how much water we used. And it turned out that, in fact, including irrigation, which we were being charged for also, which was about 4 million gallons per year, Taco was using less than 15% of the total water produced by the water treatment plant. Next slide, Gary. And if anybody's interested, I can tell you what the consumption was per area within Taco. Just a little bit more recent history. Now we're getting up close to the present. In 2019, Glacier spun off the water and sewer business to a new wholly owned subsidiary called Elbert Creek Water Company. And fact, if you want to look at what the water company does, they have their own water, they have their own website where you can look at the business. They also put in meters for all the users. Now, what does that mean for Taco? Did they put a meter on every unit? No. There were meters on each building, basically, for a single line that came in. It's very similar to what you have in an office complex or an apartment building. There are water lines that come in, but they don't meter individual offices or apartments, okay? So that is up to the landlord or whoever owns to determine how the water costs are distributed among their owners. They also hired an engineering firm to determine how to set rates for everybody served, which is a huge step in the right direction. They also began much needed improvements to the water treatment and wastewater plants that they had not done previously. It became, I think, readily apparent to many people that the existing facilities could not support the new demand from the growing community and increased water usage. So something had to be done. And since they were limited by how much they could charge their customers by the provisions of the earlier agreement, they had to go to something new, and they decided to try to go in the right direction, and I applaud them for that. However, when they started, they provided us with a first draft agreement that they wanted us to sign. Among other things, that agreement demanded that we relinquish our water rights, which were implicit in the 1989 agreement, as well as facility liens that we have, so that if the whoever provides the water and sewer services doesn't deliver, we can claim our portion of the facilities in liens, okay? They wanted us to relinquish that. I will tell you that we rejected that proposal outright. And after that, more than 2 years of very intense negotiations ensued. And everybody on the Water and Sewer Committee worked diligently over that period of time. I can't tell you how many meetings we had. I've mentioned we had probably at least 50 to 100 iterations of the agreement that we went through with our legal counsel and went to their legal counsel, went to their owners, et cetera, before we came up with a new agreement that is both equitable and it benefits Taco, and I'll tell you how it does. Next slide, Gary. What changed? Instead of a flat fee, billing is now based on metered usage in accord with the American Water Works Association recommendations. The AWWA is recognized as the national standard for how water utilities should be run and how they should charge their customers and what they need to do. It also provides for needed capital improvements. There are currently about $10 million in water treatment and wastewater treatment plan upgrades going on. Some of that work has already been completed and it will continue. It also provides for the first time for a reserve fund. In the previous years when Glacier Club made a profit on what they took in versus what they had to pay for their operation and maintenance, none of that money went into reserves to pay for future capital improvements. We have that now. In addition, they created a 5-member advisory board to the water company, and Taco has the first seat on that advisory board and has participated. I've actually been one to do that for the last 3 years since they formed that advisory committee. Okay, next slide, Gary. What does this mean in dollars for Taco owners? Going back to 2018, before this new stuff started, Taco paid $416,268 for water and sewer, which was based on an average of $92 per unit per month in Taco. This year, Taco will pay a total of about $370,000, which is budgeted. However, we won't know what the exact figure will be because it's now based on metered usage. And we don't know exactly how much our usage is going to be for the upcoming year. And currently, I think, Joe, you showed that we're under what we
Under budget at this point.
The amount that we pay now includes money set aside for capital improvements in terms of debt service and for building up reserves. So we went from paying 77% of the total water and sewer fees of all of the customers to 24% this year. And ECWC's 22 budget is over $1.5 million. It is about 3 times what it was in 2018 because of the new capital improvements and also setting aside money for reserves. Yeah.
The 81 per unit per month, does that include irrigation?
Yes.
Yes. Yep. The question was, did the $92 per month or $81 per month that we're paying this year, does that include irrigation? It does. And irrigation is a large portion of our total water consumption. In 2016, 2017, when I did the analysis, the residential consumption for the year was about 11 million gallons, and the irrigation consumption was about 4 million gallons. It varies from year to year depending on climatic conditions, drought, et cetera, and also what we do with our landscaping. And I'm excited about the work that our new landscaping committee is doing to try to help reduce the water consumption for our landscaping. So that is a quick overview of what we have now and how it occurred. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. Yeah, Karen.
Several years ago, metering water leaving the plant and what arrived here, tremendous difference, like there was a major or disappearance from what it was saying out what we received. Was that ever resolved?
It was. The question was, in a few years ago, two or three years ago, maybe at a town hall or something that ECWC had, it was noted that there appeared to be a discrepancy between the metered usage and how much the water plant had been producing. That difference was tracked down. It took them a little while to do it. They brought in people to check lines for leakage because that was the first thing that they believed occurred. It turned out that a lot of that water was being used by the water treatment plant itself. Okay, so that was finally resolved, this question.
Also software, please.
Yes.
Does Tamron or Glacier use any kind of rainwater system?
Yeah, good point. Gary, if you bring up one of my backup slides, it shows the pie charts. There we go. There, and if you scroll down a little bit more so we can see the legend there, you see the pie chart on the left. That shows what it costs to operate each of 3 systems that ECWC does. The blue upper right corner, $280,000 of their budget goes toward raw water. That raw water is used exclusively to water the golf course, and Glacier is the only entity that pays that money. We are not responsible for any of that. The other elements of that pie chart, the largest one, about 50% of it, $800,000, is for production and delivery of our domestic water that we use in all of our condos, and we also use to irrigate our property. The reason we have to use domestic water as opposed to raw water is because of Colorado law. It said if any children or pets have any access to any of the irrigation sprinklers or whatever, we can't have raw water for that. The golf course gets away with it because they post signs to keep people off the property when they're watering, and they do their watering primarily at night. So they have a waiver, if you will, for that requirement. Okay. The other component of the operations that is about 1/3 of it is for wastewater treatment. Okay. Any other questions?
And that wastewater also goes on the golf course because it replenishes the ponds.
Yes, that's right. It's a very complex system, but yeah, some of it gets recycled. As Karen.
One last thing, we received a letter some years ago. Quality of water was, I'll just use the word questionable. So we went to bottled water. We could taste the difference. The quality of the water, like Washington Shield or something. If the forming of this new company that's doing water, is it being tested by state or something else that we can get better quality of?
Let me repeat Karen's question, and it had to do with the quality of the water that we receive here at Tamron and the other customers within the community. Some time ago, some people noticed that the water not only didn't taste real good, it didn't even look real good. So there have been issues from time to time. The state, and maybe even the federal, I'm not sure about that, but at least the state has standards for maximum concentrations of different contaminants, if you will, to our domestic water. And every water company is required to test periodically and submit those test results to the state. The state then comes back and says whether they're in compliance or whether they're not. If they're not, they have to address it immediately. And we get reports periodically. Gary, do you want to?
Yeah, I can't remember what the last one was, Joe. It's posted on the website. There is a water report that's posted on the Glacier Club page of the website. And to your point about how the water has looked, generally speaking, when the water looks bad, it's due to either they're flushing the hydrants or they've had a broken pipe that they're replacing. Those are the two times, for the most part, 90% of the time, when the water looks bad, it's because of one of those two things. If the water tastes bad, it's because we've got really hard water.
That's the key. Our water is very hard. And that's why bottled water tastes better.
And I can tell you our own experience from not being happy with the water. We put in a water softener in our unit, and we put in a reverse osmosis drinking system also. And we've had no issues or problems with the water since we did that some years ago. And other owners have done the same thing. Any other questions? Gus?
Yeah, well, thank you and all those who helped and assisted and worked together to bring this to a conclusion. My question is a broader one. Does that now put all our major disputes with the Glacier Club today? Or do we still have somebody?
And that actually,
Rick, you take that one.
The question was.
Yes, the question was.
Does this water and sewer agreement conclude all of the outstanding issues we had to negotiate with Glacier Club? Major issues. Rick?
And the answer is yes. To a little bit of background, when Joe started and we decided to break away, because we used to be 100% dependent on
TV, internet.
Yeah, TV, internet, water
everything.
For Glacier, all those utilities. We decided to go on our own with the TV. Once we did that, Rick Carlton decided to get out of the utility business. So we did that, then we started exploring with Ting for the internet. They then switched to Ting. We then had to negotiate an agreement where we could use the conduits running next to the roads to get our fiber optic lines around. So we now pay a little bit for that. We have our own internet, which is better than what it was. Our DirecTV is better than what we used to have. The Carltons made everybody in behind all the gates everywhere. They now buy their own TV. Same thing. They've contracted with Ting, but they're all individual accounts. So that is taken care of everything. He then spun off ECWC. So they've gotten out of the utilities. Joe did made up some estimates as far as what our impact is to Glacier. And he looked at membership dues for the club, user fees, resort fees off our rentals, ECWC, internet, and the impact to Glacier from Taco is estimated about $1,058,000 for 2021, and for 2022, we estimate that our impact to Glacier will be about 1.25 million.
That's revenues that we
Revenue
send back
that they
home.
get off of everything that we do. And, you know, the other huge thing that was negotiated was, you know, our access to the facilities and use of the golf course, you know, and that has been one of the big drivers in the increase in our home values is having access to the golf course and facilities. Bob.
I think we owe Jerry and his committee a standing ovation.
I think we do
There were quite a few folks who worked very diligently on this issue for a long time. And I'm glad we are where we are today. Should be in place for 15 years and renewable after that. We're in good shape. Thanks.
Okay, the next item I had on the order of business was for BHP maintenance, and to circle back to the question from the gentleman back there. Right now, we have a temporary agreement with BHP that will run through the end of October. When we get to our budget meeting, we will have the board meeting to approve the budget. We will have a formal vote as to whether we will continue with our agreement with them. As of right now, there is nothing that would prevent us from doing that. A lot of what you guys are seeing, things are running very smoothly. The agreement that we had, we're actually coming in under as far as costs to what they had when they came in, and Anthony can explain this a little bit more. The day he stepped in, there were about 60 unanswered requests for service across the property. Within 2 weeks, they had those caught up. And you guys see a lot of the stuff that is going on. Ryan spent a lot of time working on the sprinkler system. You see a lot of the stuff that was done down in Gambelo, trimming up. They completed the landscaping plan up in High Point after Taryn left. So we have a lot of good things going, and I see no reason why that won't continue. So
Rick, can we ask for owner input?
Yeah.
So please, if you've had experiences with this arrangement that we have now with BHP, let the board know. Okay.
Yeah. So with that, Anthony Sedler, he's the face of BHP for us here at Tameron. If you send a request in or call, Anthony's the gentleman you'll be in contact with.
All right, so first of all, good afternoon and thank you for having me. For those of you who don't know me, I am Anthony Sedler and I'm your new maintenance operations coordinator. So if you're calling the maintenance office or sending emails, that will come across the desk that I'm at. In the event, if I'm off or on vacation, Rick already mentioned Ryan. Ryan's kind of my my right-hand guy, we'll get him in from the greens if I'm ever out, but excuse me, allergies. Yeah, I'm not a Tameron employee. I'm actually a BHP employee. And like it was mentioned earlier, all of the maintenance for the property has been subcontracted out to BHP Enterprises. Now, that being said, we work in great concert with the Tameron staff, and through Paige, Elisa, and Gary. I thank them because they've made this transition for us absolutely incredible. And like Rick touched on, yeah, I had work orders in the computer dating back almost a full 12 months that went unanswered when we started. And we didn't start really up and running until June 1st. So we've been here about 5 minutes and we've accomplished, we've been able to move mountains thus far. And it's still a learning curve, you know, learning process with us and this property. So if you hit the fast forward button this time next year, we'll be that much more ahead of the game. So
BHP stand for?
Beal, Horton, and Petit. I'm sure everyone's heard the name Petit. Greg Petit is the head of the company, and so that's the P in that. The other names, you don't quote me on it, but I think one's an old lifelong friend and a vet for back in his family back in the day. So. Let's see, have I missed anything for the intro? Anybody?
Don't think so. Another thing I will add, after Dave Dunn retired, he really kind of wanted to separate himself away from here, just get away and enjoy retirement. He also had some health issues. He's worked through a lot of that. Subsequent conversations I've had with him is he endorses BHP. He said he will help them in any way that he can, and he's helped them a lot already. He said he will not do that for anybody else. So
to piggyback on that, I do have a great relationship with Dave Dunn. All of us wearing the BHP shirts do, and I call him pretty regularly, actually, and he's great. He's taken time out of his schedule to come up and show us things that we need to know about. And anytime we have questions, he's right there for us. So we're very fortunate to still have him to rely on as we're, you know, getting involved in this learning process with the property. And just so everybody knows, when we were here as a contractors in the remodeling aspect, anytime the maintenance staff had an issue or something they couldn't resolve, they would subcontract the work of about 99% of it out to BHP. So when we fell into this role, it was kind of a no-brainer because we are a one-stop shop. We do have an electrician, we have a plumber, we have great framing guys, contractors. So if something doesn't fall within the scope of just normal Tameron maintenance and it does require a contractor to be involved, we can take care of that for you. Now, that being said, you know, you still have sky's the limit. You can employ anyone you want for contracting needs, but it is nice that we are here. And when we get in, like we're replacing a lot of cast iron now, which I'm sure a lot of you are experiencing or have experienced us being out in your unit replacing that. We're handling all of that because we're just letting it fall under the scope of normal maintenance. And where Tameron saves a lot of money is that because we are this one-stop shop, we're not having to pay to get all these other entities out and come up and resolve issues that we're being able to take care of it in-house 99% of the time. So it really is just kind of a win-win. And plus it also gets us a chance to really, you know, meet everybody here, get to know what some of the issues are, the problems that we've been having, so we can look into the future and get things rectified and up to date. So we're not, you know, constantly readdressing the same problem over and over.
Anthony, can you talk about some of your staff and what their roles are and if they're 100% Tameron or where that?
Absolutely. So on the BHP end of things, you have myself, we have Ryan Sherman, who Ryan has been instrumental in handling all of the landscape. What we've done is I've taken the role of inside driving the desk and playing the traffic cop. Ryan is kind of handling the greens portion, the landscape maintenance and what's going on. outside of the property, and I think he's doing a great job. So we have Ryan, and then we have Ty Penning. He's also a BHP employee. He is most of the time helping Ryan with all of the outside work, but we also use him for work orders if need be. We have Kenton Smith. He is a great handyman type guy and carpenter. So I use and abuse the heck out of him when it comes to work orders. And I'm sure if anybody in here has seen us come into your home and taking care of a work order, it's usually Kenton. We also have, and I am not making this name up, we have a gentleman by the name of Catfish. That's what he wants to go by, and he's a hoot, and he is the reason why these flower beds are really looking good in the way they are. That's what he loves doing. He's very passionate about his work, and you know, we just turned him loose on the flower beds, and he just does an absolutely stellar job. We also have Keegan Sherman. He comes from an electronic background. He's Bobby Sherman's son. Bobby's a BHP employee. Bobby handles the majority of the stuff on the remodel end, or on something where in the past we would have to call out a subcontractor. Bobby handles all of that. We have Clay Bassett. Clay Bassett was a former licensed electrician and plumber. So, and when I say former, we're looking at getting him up and recertified, but he actually took a break from that, was running the Granite Peaks Ranch, and until that sold, which is a bummer because I got a lot of good fishing on the Pine River up there. So I'm not happy about that, but I mean, he's just, we have a huge diversity when it comes to what we can offer. So, have I missed anybody? Did I? Because they'll kill me if I do. Does anybody have any questions for me? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So the question was asked if BHP is going to be handling all the snow removal, and that is correct. We have heavy equipment, and yes, we are going to take on all of the snow removal. I've heard it's going to be a pretty nasty January, so we'll see. But yes, ma'am. And in conjunction with that, we are, you know, I don't want to go into detail on all of our plans because I could sit here and talk forever, but we do have a plan in place. We've all seen the death signals in the lodge. You know, wintertime comes and, you know, it looks like you're in Carlsbad Taverns and with all the icicles coming down. And we're constantly having a contract out, or Tamron is, to get the ice mitigation, block off parts of the parking lot. We are trying to get that before the lodge roof gets replaced, which is coming up in the future. Right now, we are trying to get a heated edge and a heated gutter system on that with dump tapes for the melt, so we can completely alleviate having to look up as you're walking in the door. Yes, ma'am. So if you have a problem, the question asks, how do you get a hold of maintenance? Same process that it's always been. You can go to the Tamron website, and there's a little maintenance request tab that you can click on that. It automatically populates it. Thank you. Apparently it was a long night last night. To my email, so I will get that. You can also call the maintenance office. The extension is
6740.
6740. Thank you. Or you can even call the front desk and they can patch you right through into the maintenance office. And last but not least, we have an open door. We believe in transparency. Anyone is welcome to walk into the maintenance office at any time, ask questions. We can generate a request. We can talk about anything you want, and I can show you exactly what we're doing. That way, everybody can see exactly who you're getting as a maintenance product. Yes, ma'am.
One question. Orkin mounts boxes and do those go through you?
So, question was asked about the baiting the mouse traps under buildings, if they go through Orkin or through maintenance. We Yes, actually, go ahead and bring that to my attention because I will get in contact with them. And I've been doing my darndest to make sure they're staying up. Obviously, we know we have a lot of rodents. We have a lot of hornets. We've got we are in the mountains, but you know, we do have those critters running around. And if you bring that to my attention, then I can really stay on top of them and go out and make sure that they're providing the service that we all are paying for.
So we should contact you if there's a hornet's nest outside our window.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Anthony.
You're very welcome.
Anthony, can you describe the process? When the owner submits a request and then what happens?
So the question was asked just the process when an owner submits a work request. I'll get that request. Now, if it's depending on who it's submitted through, like if it goes to the front desk or if it's, you know, rental dealing with Heather's company, they actually have access to what's called the fix system, which is the system that we use in the computer to generate and complete work orders. They can create those. The front desk can create them. Gary creates them all the time. So anybody in the Tamarron staff can create these. But if I just get an email from someone saying, hey, I have a hornet's nest outside my front door and I really want it to go away, I will then just generate a work request, which is basically describing the problem, hornet's nest in front of unit X, Y, and Z. And depending on our workload, I will go and take care of some work orders, or guys come in the morning for kind of our morning sit down and hash anything out that we need to address. And I'll just divvy up the work orders and send them out to guys. And if everybody's out and we get a pressing request in, we have radios and cell phones, and I'll just call guys saying, hey, look, you know, we have a leak in this unit and we need to go down there right away and take care of it. And so not to be too verbose with this, but yeah, it's basically just in that, it's just a standard piece of paper that shows the unit number. It shows, you know, the description of the problem. And then on the completion notes, I will annotate, yes, we went to the unit, identified the hornet's nest, it was sprayed or it was removed, and then we close it out, and that's it.
Communicate the resolution with the owner?
Yes, ma'am. So this is where it's going to get a lot better as it happens. Yes, the question was asked if we communicate the resolution with the owner. And yes, I'm doing my absolute best to reach out and let people know where we stand with that. I'll follow my sword. I've been a little behind with some of this because in this catch-up process, I was having stacks, and sometimes I would forget to just jot down who to call. And so if it was anyone in here, you have my sincere apologies. But that being said, if you do submit a request and you want to know the status of it, by all means, feel free to call, email. I will gladly let you know where we stand.
I would just ask, you know, obviously I'm coming off the board, but I think when we look as we're doing the renewal, you know, et cetera, we would love to see the metrics, you know, as to when a complaint comes in, you know, what was the time to complete, you know, from when it was filed to completion. That would be very, very helpful.
Certainly.
So that we could just better understand where we were, what did that metric look like before and where we are today. So from a business perspective, that's Absolutely. The best way to see.
And where we stand at this moment, if a work request comes into the office, it's going to be jumped on immediately. We are caught up to the point where we do have work orders on hold for various reasons, but if someone calls right now with, you know, a problem, TV's not working, phone line's out, hornet's nest, whatever it is, you know, about 2-3 minutes later, you'll have someone showing up at the door. So we are caught up in that sense.
We previously had issues after hours, after working hours. We had a maintenance person available to us, and it was more kind of indifferent, noise, that type of thing. Do we have anything at this point?
So the question came up about having maintenance staff at night. No, at the moment, there is no night staff, and the 2 night staff that were here, they did leave and went off to greener pastures. But that being said, we still have an on-call system. So if anyone has a pressing issue after hours, the front desk has an on-call schedule, and we will come out and address the problem. Yes.
We are, to finish answering your question, we are looking for someone. We're actively searching for someone. It's just at the moment we don't have anyone.
And so is that more just a general property manager or somebody that's available?
No, it's always been a maintenance position.
Just maintenance.
Correct.
That's great to hear, Anthony. So let's say worst case scenario, my pipe breaks at midnight. I can call the front desk and they'll forward it.
Yes, ma'am. And if something like that, you're going to get the entire BHP crew up here.
Right. I said worst case scenario.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Shared question.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. So the question came up about the gnat problem. Just so y'all know, I live out in Bayfield, and my wife and I have been battling gnats like everybody here has, this entire season. I think it's always been a problem, but it's been worse because we had a spectacular monsoon season. And with all that moisture, that's what gnats are attracted to, is moisture. And so we've been spraying and vacuuming and doing everything we can to mitigate the gnat problem. Just so you all know, apple cider, apparently I need speech lessons. Apple cider vinegar, a little bit of dish soap and sugar in a bowl will attract them. They get in there and they can't fly away. That works really well. A little bit of, dish soap, cider vinegar, spraying plants, your soil. They love to lay eggs in the soil in plants. So if you have them inside your house, I would start looking at maybe even completely repotting a plant, changing out the soil. That can help. But I have seen a decline in them as we're getting a little closer to fall. So hopefully they'll work themselves out. Yes, sir.
So over the years, I've been in with news maintenance for items such as adding a vending machine. That's fairly extreme. But there's this going outside using vending. Are you guys going to be interested in doing some of the work that might otherwise you might have involved in something outside?
Yes. So
for pay, I mean, to pay the association.
To
be charged by this, obviously.
Yes, sir.
Association charges.
Yes, the question came up. Basically, if we have maintenance or work that's kind of outside the scope of normal maintenance, is BHP going to handle that? Yes, the answer is, 9 out of 10 times, yes. The only time we turn work down on the subcontracting side, not maintenance, we'll never turn maintenance requests down, but for the private contracting with our company is workload. If we have a pressing workload and it's something where, hey, we won't be able to get to it for another 4 weeks just because we're so inundated with work, that's the only time we will actually tell you, hey, it's going to be this far out, and you may want to seek a different contractor just to get that done. We won't turn anything away, nor will we be upset if you have a contractor that you really like. Great, we fully support that. Yes, ma'am.
So are you saying that you are up right now on maintenance that you're
Yes, ma'am. As far as tickets that have come in, we have a lot of pending orders that are on hold. Like I said, some of them are just for timing or waiting for fall or orders to come in. But as far as if we get a request in right now, I'm not going to put anybody at the back of the list because we're trying to get caught.
We called in an issue with tar, so I actually talked to individuals who've been put way back on that. I don't want to get the whole meeting.
Now that could fall again on the subcontracting side. I really can't speak for Bobby on what our schedule is because ignorance is bliss in my world. I really don't want to know that. I always turn everybody over to Bobby Sherman for the subcontracting portion of, like, say, resealing and the pig blanket and doing that. That will fall into those guys, and I know that we are backed up at the moment as far as the contracting portion of it. Maintenance side, no. Yes, Gary.
Yeah, just to clarify what I think I heard Gus say, if you are going to contract with BHP to do any kind of remodel work or anything like that, that does not get put on your HOA statement. Any work like that is between you and BHP. That will not go on your HOA statement. Just want to make that clear. Secondly, the gnat problem, as Anthony said, it's everywhere. I've gotten phone calls and emails from people who think it's only their unit. It is everywhere. Believe me, and the worst places that we've seen are in the lodge, but like Anthony said, it seems to be decreasing this past week. Thirdly, I'll say the last thing I'll say is some of you have already seen this, but one of the benefits to having BHP here is that we do not have to go to outside contractors for certain work. And any outside contractor, you can verify this, the first thing they do is charge you $85 to $100 per service call. You're not going to have that $85 to $100 service call charge when BHP is here to do that maintenance work. So that's one. We will have to call the Roto-Rooter guys. We will have to call some other contractors occasionally, but not nearly as much as we had to in the past.
Thank you
for that.
Anthony.
Sorry about that, Gil.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you all very much.
And just to be clear, for remodel work, BHP does not oversee that. We contract with Dave Dunn, and he comes in and oversees all remodel work by any contractor. So there is no conflict of interest with BHP overseeing anybody else. They're treated no differently than anybody else. So the last thing that we have before we get to the ballot counting is landscaping with Mark. And Mark, looking at everybody's faces, they want it extremely high level.
My name is Mark Paliza. I live in Gamble Oaks. My wife and I, we've been here. Can you hear me? Because everyone says.
Screen.
Is that better?
That's better.
I feel like I'm yelling. So my name's Mark Paliza. My wife and I live in Gamble Oaks. This is our 4th season here.
Mark, just stand closer to the microphone.
Right here. I'll stand right in front of Greg.
Yeah, you do that, buddy.
About a year ago, maybe to the day, I approached Rick and offered to revive or just bring back the landscaping effort here at Tamarron. And since then, we've done a lot of work. First, I just want to acknowledge all of the folks on the committee that have worked this year. What we did is reached out, or what I did is reached out, and when forming the committee, made an effort to have homeowners that represented Pinecone, Gamble Oak, High Point, and the Lodge, all being represented on the committee, so everybody could have input, because nobody can see better what is needed in their unit than someone that lives in that unit. So these are the people, Dottie, Trish is stepping down, Mandy is stepping up. Mandy, just as a little bit of background, is the head of Sustainable Agriculture at James Ranch. So we've got a person that knows the kind of stuff where we're heading. We've got Lynette at Pinecone, Rich at High Point, Pat at the Lodge, and also Margaret at High Point. So we've got a good representative of homeowners. We've got a management and staff support that's been unbelievable. Elisa and Paige have been with us every step of the way at every meeting. And Anthony and Ryan have just been, like everything else, they've been unbelievable. And Greg with the board has been with us every step of the way. Special thanks goes to Gary. We have met remotely many times all year long, and Gary has made that work on Zoom calls, and Rick has been more than supportive. Rick has sort of marched along with us every step of the way, and his input has been very valuable. Gary. So we had 9 meetings this year. What we all learned in our first meeting or so is what we don't know. So what we did is embarked on bringing in experts from a bunch of different areas at meetings to educate the committee. We had Matt early on with Deep Roots. He's the arborist that we use here at Cameron, who walked us through and sort of introduced the I'll just say the wildfire issue. We have a gentleman down in Glenwood, his name is Dan Noonan, and Dan is the retired fire chief of the Greater Durango District. He lives here. He addressed the board early on and said the first thing you need to do is acknowledge that you've got an issue and then tackle the issue. And that's a fire mitigation issue. We had Ben Bain with the La Plata Weed Control Manager. He came in where there's been a lot of people that have talked about they don't like the smell of the weed stuff that goes down every spring. He has given us a custom weed management plan that will eliminate a lot of the chemicals that have to go on the ground. We've worked with Glacier and so maybe Rockwood as well, talking to them about their wildfire mitigation plan. If you take 3 pieces of the puzzle, we may be the piece that is just the last one that's getting engaged for that one. They're very We've had Darren down at on the extension agent come up, and he gave a very interesting presentation to us in August that basically showed us historically over the past 100 years the climate at Farmington is now the climate of Durango. Historic climate of Durango is now the climate at Tamarron, and in the next 10, 15, 25 years, we can see all of that weather change moving up the heat and the dryness as it moves to the north. That's what we're preparing for. We've had consults with the tax office just to get a better understanding of where this Tamarron Glacier boundary is so we can reach other boundaries of work. We have talked to the Soil Conservation Service about soils. Soils are very different in High Point than they are in Gangway. We've had on-property consults with Steve Underwood Forestry on fire mitigation. Just as a little bit of background, his foreman Jackson is what they call a Sandman hotshot. That's an expert in firefighting in the area. He led the crew across the street 5 years ago. He knows the stuff. And Rick and a number of other committee members have toured Glacier, Rockwood area to see what they're doing with wildfire mitigation. So our plan for 2022 is based on our priorities. The plan is on the Cameron website. If you'd like to read detail, it'll be changed a lot next year based on what we've learned. Appearance, of course, employee safety to structures, costs are something that is a reality of life. Productivity, what we can do to make the staff do more with less people. Water conservation, maybe that should have been at the top, but these are all equal. Suitable planning, and then Gary. So just at a very high level, as Rick asked, we have a long 4-page list of recommendations that we prepared here just this past week that we'll be working with staff on implementing here over the course of the next month. Fire hazard potential comes to the top of the list. We are in an area that is, we talked about insurance this morning. Well, It's not a tornado here like we've got in North Texas. It's not a flood here like we may have in East. Hopefully our biggest risk in wildfire. So we are looking at that hard. We've had experts advise us. We will be getting proposals from experts, but mitigation, the committee believes mitigation there is urgent. Some places are worse than others. Southwest corner of Campbell Oaks has a tremendous water pool issue. Pine Cones is by far the most worrisome. High Point is not so much. The good news is that in irrigated areas, that's essentially the front of all our areas. That's really just not enough. So the competition that we've got with keeping our trees and keeping our beauty versus what has to be trimmed back to prevent wildfire isn't really that big of an issue in the front areas where we're here. Maybe it's no issue at all. Go work it out. Back to those. Sprinkler systems. Anthony, Ryan have done remarkable work this year. They will continue that work. There may be some upgrades. And just to say, water we will have a on that as next year. Campbell Oak will receive its big treatment next year. I received it last, but this year, the plantings will be consistent with our mountain environment. Water wise and what we choose. I think as look, if we look out the window right here at that garden, that's the kind of look that we're going for. Things that grow here naturally without needing to go out in water. We like rocks. There are no rocks that require irrigation. It's strategically placed. They look beautiful. Obviously, you don't want to cover the whole place with rocks, but as we move forward over our planning, what we will be doing is looking at replacing grass with stone and gravel. If you go to the area up by High Point, the Peregrine entrance in High Point, and look at the way that they treated that, that's the kind of look that we I missed him. And there's long, like I said, there's long list of improvements. It's 4 pages long, single space, number 11 font. Anyone who would like to see it, they're glad to see it. But we will be working with Anthony and his group on that, pulling together costs, pulling together what resources they need to achieve that standard of care. And that'll be our work in the near future. And finally, the committee will continue to be educated. We've got already a slate of people that we have planned to speak next year. The committee meetings are the first Tuesday of every month at 10 o'clock in the Moore Conference Room. Anyone is invited to sit in and listen to speakers. So with that, here's the last slide. So what are the next step forward? We will be working at costs and all the stuff that I just described here over the course of the next month. In the October meeting, first Tuesday of October, you're all invited. There we will look at costs against urgency. We will prioritize what we want to present to the board. We're an advisory committee. We advise to the board, we propose, they dispose. But at the end, hopefully we have good recommendation, and next year we get to see even more than we've seen this year. That kind of.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. I want to personally thank Mark and the committee. You can see from the stuff, the visitors, the little excursions we've gone on, Mark has put a tremendous amount of effort into this. And he's brought along the rest of the committee members, and they've been very instrumental in supporting him. And they've done a fantastic job so far.
And get over the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. At this point, I want to remind everybody we're electing 2 people to replace Kathy and Ron. And again, want to thank them for their service on the board. So at this point, I'll ask if there's any nominations from the floor. Okay, hearing none, then I declare the nominations closed. This will be the last call for voting if anyone else has a vote. Those of you who've been here before, normally we take a break and you know, it's usually a little bit of time. Due to the length of the meeting, we did not have to wait today. So we have enough time if you guys want to go to the bathroom, something like that, grab something to drink. We can do that. Basically, all we have is just a few ballots that were turned in this morning. Everything else has been tabulated. So with that, we'll just short break and we'll get the results.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, this is Michelle Saniel from Frederick Zink and Associates, our independent third person. And she will announce the results of the election in alphabetical order. Has nothing to do with number of votes.
The two that are listed is Scott Gillen and Mark Kaliza.
Okay, with that, I don't believe we have any unfinished business. I think as long as we've gone, everybody's pretty much had an opportunity to speak and say what they want, ask questions that they've had. Is there anything else anyone else would like to bring up? Go ahead.
New business. Just want to ask, with regards to the recent break-ins, the vehicles, are there other things that we could be doing proactively to address that? I know we put in the video cameras.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we can also put the movement activated lights in more strategic places. And who should?
It would be something we could discuss. We have contacted Sheriff's Department. Sheriff's Department is making a lot more patrols. I've been hit twice. I understand. It's appears to be someone who probably is drug related, that because what they've gotten out of my car, $30, $35. You know, I did see on the camera where one pickup, the guy pulled out a backpack. I know down in Gambolo a few years ago, a backpack was taken. You know, the biggest thing we can do is lock our cars. It's not somebody who is forcibly entering any vehicle. Every single vehicle has been left unlocked. So biggest thing we can do is lock our vehicles and, you know, be responsible for your own personal belongings, you know. And like I said, we're on what law enforcement calls the hot list, where they make extra patrols and stuff like that. We also cultivate a better relationship with the Sheriff's Department. We buy them lunch a couple times a year. And so we get better response from them for things like that. So as far as the other stuff, we're taking a look at it.
On that note, has there been any thought or discussion about maybe an overnight security? Because the only person we have is the front desk.
Do you want an assessment for another person?
I mean, how important do we value our safety? I mean, you
And
got loud noises and partying out in the lodge parking lot. You got vehicle break-ins. Just wondering if that's anything that.
You
the
know,
board has considered
if
or
that's something the group wants, then we can do it. You know, everyone's going to pay for it. You know, and if that's what the group wants, then we're more than happy to do that.
Others that have thought that might be a good idea.
I mean, the only overnight person is one at the front desk. I don't know why we have to bribe the sheriff's department with lunches to make more.
It's a relationship. I think
It's a
that's what it is.
relationship. We don't have to bribe.
I don't think we're driving.
We can discuss it.
So, but it's something we can discuss further. Yes, Bob.
The only thing I would recommend for Tamron is maybe more security cameras. And when someone does have a break-in of their vehicle, call the sheriff's office, report it to them, take latent prints, and put this guy in jail. It's a simple thing. It's probably one guy that's been doing it.
Bob is former law enforcement.
That's having overnight security, I don't.
Do you have any signs that say cameras in action or those, you know, like an ADT or whatever that we might look up?
I think there are some at the dumpsters.
Yeah.
It's the dumpsters and I think some of the guest service centers on the outlying areas may have those.
And it'd be something we can look at too.
And
you know, a lot of these suggestions, funnel them to Gary, and you know, we'll have the budget meeting at the end of October, beginning November, and that's when we can plan for these type of items.
And I'd also say, remind everybody, yes, this is all fresh in our minds because it happened a few weeks ago. The previous time we had break-ins in cars was what, 2-3 years ago?
Yeah.
At least 2-3 years ago. So it's not like this is a continuing habitual problem. This happens once every few years, and it's always with cars that are unlocked. Lock your cars. Do we want to have a security force here to cover something that happens once every few years? I don't know. The loud parties, yes, we do have loud parties. Those are generally in the summertime when we have wedding groups or something here, but it's not something that happens all the time. So the question is, do we want to have a security force that we pay for relatively isolated incidents? I don't know.
Yes, Peggy.
You know, if you have a security person driving around, if you're a crook that wants to break in, the security guy goes around and he comes back and there should be, if people are having parties and you should be able to put a complaint in to the front desk saying this thing, and then maybe you can add that to your check-in. If you are noisy after such and such and we have complaints, then you go back and talk to them. Get a fine.
We do have it in our rules and regulations that if law enforcement is contacted, the owner of those units would be fined $500. So if there's big problems, you know, this year was first year I've been woken up in High Point, but I was woken up. You know, I know that there have been issues in Pinecone in the past. There were also some in Gamble Oak again this year. Contact the front desk. I absolutely don't have a problem going and confronting parties. So, okay. So we've been asked to go ahead and wrap up so we can free up the room. So unless there's anything else major, then thank you everyone for attending.
Jeff, vote for adjournment.
Remind everybody about the hot dog lunch.
Also, we're having the hot dog cookout for Sotheby's over at the north deck, north end of the lodge.
You said it was barbecue, not hot dog.
Okay, barbecue.